Before the invention of the car, before the world ran on oil, one man saw its potential and built an empire that would shape the course of history. Welcome to QuickCasters, where we unearth those fascinating stories of the past. Today, we're diving into the life of John D. Rockefeller, a name synonymous with both incredible wealth and a legacy of, well, ruthless ambition. How did a man born in pretty modest circumstances rise to become one of the most powerful figures of his time? Hit that subscribe button, and let's unlock the secrets of Rockefeller's journey.
You know, it really is captivating how Rockefeller's story starts. Even before oil was, even central to society. His early life, it really reveals a lot about the mindset that would later fuel his incredible success.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I've been looking into his childhood, and it's amazing how some of those early experiences almost seem to foreshadow his later business dealings.
Absolutely. His father, William Rockefeller, was known to be a shrewd businessman, even described by some as a bit of a con man, There are stories about how he would cheat his own children in trades, claiming it was to teach them valuable lessons about business and negotiation.
Wow. Talk about tough love, huh? It does make you wonder how that kind of upbringing might shape someone's view of the world and the lengths they'd go to succeed.
It certainly seems to have instilled a sense of cunning and a drive to come out on top. Even as a young boy, John D. Rockefeller displayed an entrepreneurial spirit. He'd buy candy in bulk, sell it piecemeal to his siblings for a profit. And he even had a small business growing potatoes, which he sold to neighbors.
It's almost as if he was practicing for his future empire building even as a child. Are there any other examples of this early business sense?
Oh, definitely. There's a story about him lending $50 to a farmer at the age of just 16 at a 7% interest rate, no less. Think about that for a moment. A teenager already understanding the power of lending and accruing interest. It's like a preview of the financial strategies that he would later employ on a much grander scale.
That's an incredible detail. It speaks to a natural inclination toward finance and a mind that was already thinking about how to make money grow. But it wasn't just his father who influenced his views on money. I've read that his mother, Eliza, also played a significant role.
Absolutely. Eliza was a devout Baptist who instilled in him, a strong work ethic and a commitment to saving and careful accounting. She believed in living a modest life and being responsible with finances, principles that John D. Rockefeller would carry with him throughout his life.
So we're seeing a combination of influences here. The shrewdness and risk-taking from his father, combined with the discipline and meticulousness from his mother. It's fascinating how these early experiences seem to emerge to form the foundation of his future business practices.
It's a powerful reminder that childhood experiences, can have a lasting impact on how we approach the world, especially in the realm of business.
Right.
And as we move into the next chapter of Rockefeller's life, we see these early lessons really coming into play. He starts his career as a clerk at the age of 16. And even in this, seemingly ordinary job, his ambition and drive shine through. If you're finding this as fascinating as we are, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends.
Yeah, it's remarkable how even in his early working years, he displayed those qualities that would really define his success. He was known for his meticulous bookkeeping and his incredible dedication to his work. In fact, he set a goal for himself to earn $100,000 and live to be 100 years old.
That's a pretty ambitious goal, especially for that time period. Did he manage to achieve it?
Well, he definitely exceeded that financial goal. But his lifespan fell a bit short. He lived to be 97, which is still quite impressive. But what's really interesting is how the outbreak of the Civil War in 1861 actually played a role in accelerating his early business success. Now, that's something I wouldn't have guessed. How did a war help someone on their path to becoming one of the wealthiest men in history?
Well, the Civil War created a huge demand for supplies for the Union Army. And Rockefeller, along with his business partner Maurice Clark, seized the opportunity. Their company, Clark and Rockefeller, supplied a wide range of goods, everything from salt and pork to hay and grain. They also got involved in the production of kerosene, which was becoming increasingly important for lighting as whale oil became scarce.
So even in the midst of national crisis, Rockefeller saw a business opportunity and wasn't afraid to capitalize on it. It's a bit of a controversial aspect of this story, but it definitely highlights his sharp business sense.
It does. And as the war came to an end in 1865, Rockefeller found himself at a crossroads. He was already a successful businessman, but he sensed an even greater opportunity emerging on the horizon: the oil industry.
And this is where things really start to take off. Rockefeller's focus shifts from general commodities to this relatively new and somewhat chaotic world of oil production. What was it about oil that captured his attention so intensely?
Make sure to subscribe and ring that bell so you don't miss part 2 where we dive deeper.
We left off with Rockefeller at like a major crossroads, right? Deciding to dive headfirst into this whole burgeoning oil industry. It was a risky move, wasn't it? I mean, oil was still a relatively new commodity.
Oh, it was, without a doubt, a risky move. But Rockefeller, ever the astute businessman, right? He saw the potential where others just saw chaos. The mid-1860s, that was a wild time for oil. It was a real boom period with countless small producers and refiners just popping up all over the place, particularly in Pennsylvania, where oil had been discovered. It was a highly competitive and often chaotic landscape.
So what made him think he could succeed in such a volatile market?
Well, Rockefeller had this unique combination of vision, ambition, and a meticulous understanding of business operations. He really believed that the oil industry, despite its current state of, disarray, held just immense potential for growth and profit if it could be organized and controlled.
So his goal wasn't just to be another player in this oil game. He wanted to control the entire board.
Precisely. He saw those inefficiencies and that cutthroat competition, and he saw them as weaknesses to be exploited. Instead of focusing on just producing or refining oil, he envisioned this vertically integrated system where he controlled every aspect of the process, from the oil wells to the refineries, to the transportation networks, and ultimately to the consumer.
That's a pretty bold vision. I'm curious, what were some of the first steps he took to start building this empire? Where did he even begin?
Well, Rockefeller, he understood that refining, that was the key bottleneck in the oil industry. At that time, anyone could just drill a well, and extract oil. But refining it into kerosene, the primary product used for lighting, that required specialized knowledge and infrastructure. So he started by investing heavily in building the most technologically advanced refineries of the time. This allowed him to produce, higher quality kerosene at a lower cost than his competitors.
So he focused on efficiency and quality control as a way to set himself apart in the market.
Exactly. And he paired this strategy with a very aggressive approach to acquiring smaller refineries, often through ruthless tactics, let's say, that earned him a mixed reputation, to say the least.
This brings us to what some historians have called the Cleveland Massacre, the period where Rockefeller really started to solidify his control over the industry. Can you shed some light on what happened during this time?
Yeah, this is where things get a bit dark. Rockefeller, through his company Standard Oil, essentially waged a war against his competitors in Cleveland, which was then, a major refining hub. He used a variety of tactics, some of which were considered quite unethical at the time.
What kind of tactics are we talking about here? Give us some examples.
Well, one of his key strategies was to secure preferential treatment from the railroads. Remember, transportation costs, those were a major factor in the oil business. Rockefeller negotiated secret deals with the railroads, guaranteeing them a high volume of shipments in return for significantly lower rates than his competitors were paying.
It sounds like he was a master of leveraging his size and influence to get an edge over everyone else.
He was incredibly savvy in that regard. This allowed him to undercut his rivals on pricing, while simultaneously increasing his own profits. It became nearly impossible for smaller refineries to compete.
So he's cornering the market through manipulation of transportation costs. What else was he doing to squeeze out the competition?
Well, he wasn't afraid to employ more underhanded tactics as well. There are documented cases of industrial espionage where he sent spies to infiltrate rival companies and steal trade secrets.
Wow, talk about playing dirty. It sounds like he was willing to do whatever it took to win.
He was incredibly driven.
Yeah.
And he had this win-at-all-costs mentality, and in many ways it worked. By the mid-1870s, he'd acquired or driven out of business most of his competitors in Cleveland, establishing Standard Oil as the dominant force in the region. This success in Cleveland served as a model for his expansion into other major refining centers, like Pittsburgh, Philadelphia, and New York.
So the Cleveland Massacre wasn't an isolated incident. He essentially replicated this strategy across the country.
Exactly. He would target the most important refineries in each city, offering the owners a choice: sell to Standard Oil at his price, or face the consequences of competing against it.
What kind of consequences are we talking about?
Well, he could make life very difficult for his rivals. Remember his control over the railroads. He could use that leverage to just cripple their transportation costs, making it nearly impossible to get their product to market.
So it was almost like a join me or be crushed kind of proposition.
It was a very effective, if ethically questionable, business strategy. And surprisingly, many refiners chose to join forces with him rather than face ruin. They recognized his business acumen and the sheer power of Standard Oil.
So through a combination of strategic acquisitions, ruthless tactics, and sheer force of personality, Rockefeller was quickly consolidating his control over the entire eastern U.S. oil industry. It's an incredible story of ambition and ruthlessness. But as his empire grew, so did the opposition. Were there any attempts to challenge his dominance? Did anyone stand up to this oil titan?
Oh, there were definitely attempts to challenge his growing monopoly, and some of them came from unexpected sources. One of the most interesting challenges arose from a technological innovation, the pipeline.
Wait, how could pipelines threaten Rockefeller's control? Weren't they just a more efficient way to transport oil?
On the surface, yes. Pipelines offered a cheaper and more direct route to transport oil, bypassing the railroads entirely. Remember, Rockefeller's control over the railroads, that was one of his greatest weapons. Pipelines, they threatened to undermine that control by offering an alternative transportation system that he couldn't manipulate as easily.
This sounds like a serious problem for him. How did he react to this new threat? Did he try to crush the pipeline companies like he did with his refining competitors?
He certainly tried. He initially attempted to buy out the emerging pipeline companies, but some, like the Tidewater Pipe Company, proved resistant to his overtures. They believed in the potential of pipelines to break Standard Oil's stranglehold on the industry and create a more competitive market.
So a David and Goliath battle was brewing. How did Rockefeller, this master manipulator, deal with a competitor he couldn't simply buy or intimidate?
Well, he did try to intimidate them. When his initial attempts to buy Tidewater failed, he resorted to some, shall we say, less than ethical tactics. There's evidence suggesting he bribed state legislators to pass laws unfavorable to pipeline companies.
So he's playing the political game now, trying to use the government to his advantage. It's fascinating how he was always willing to adapt and find new ways to maintain his power. But did it work? Was he able to crush the pipeline threat?
Well, that's where things take an even more fascinating turn. Despite his best efforts, Rockefeller couldn't completely stop the rise of pipelines. They proved to be too efficient and cost-effective to ignore. But instead of being defeated by this new technology, he did what he did best. He adapted.
So he switched gears and decided to join the pipeline game himself. That's a pretty bold move, considering he had spent so much effort trying to undermine them.
It was. He realized that if he couldn't beat them, he might as well join them and control them from within. So he started building his own network of pipelines, eventually incorporating them into his vast and ever-growing Standard Oil empire.
This just adds another layer to this already complex story. It seems like he was always one step ahead, anticipating challenges and turning them into opportunities to expand his control even further. But surely with this level of dominance over a vital industry, someone must have tried to rein him in, right? Was there any pushback from the government? Weren't people concerned about the power he had amassed?
You're absolutely right. As Standard Oil grew, so did the scrutiny and criticism from lawmakers, journalists, and the public. People were starting to understand the dangers of monopolies and the potential harm that they could inflict on a free market.
So the stage was set for a showdown between Rockefeller and the forces determined to break up his empire. What happened next?
That, my friend, is a story for our final part. Make sure you smash that subscribe button so you don't miss the thrilling conclusion to our deep dive into the life and legacy of John D. Rockefeller.
We've been on quite a journey, haven't we? Tracing the rise of John D. Rockefeller and his Standard Oil empire. From those shrewd beginnings to really cunning strategies. He built a business juggernaut unlike anything the world had ever seen. But as we know, every empire, it eventually faces its reckoning, right? So what led to the fall of this titan of industry? Was it public pressure, government intervention, or something else entirely?
Well, the answer, like with most things in history, right, it's complex, it's multifaceted. Rockefeller, he was a master strategist, always thinking several steps ahead. But as Standard Oil's dominance grew, so did the public's unease about the concentration of so much power in the hands of,
One man?
Yeah, it's easy to understand that concern, right? When one company controls such a vital resource like oil, they can dictate prices, stifle competition, and ultimately wield enormous influence over the economy and even politics. Exactly, and that's precisely what started to happen. Journalists and reformers, they began to expose those ruthless tactics that Standard Oil had employed to crush its rivals, muckraking articles and political cartoons. They depicted Rockefeller as this greedy octopus, its tentacles wrapped around various industries and government institutions.
That sounds like public opinion was turning against him. Did this negative press have a real impact on his business?
Oh, it definitely played a role. The tide was turning. And Rockefeller's carefully crafted image as a shrewd but ultimately, benevolent captain of industry, it was beginning to crumble. This growing public disapproval, it fueled the political will to finally take action against Standard Oil.
So it was a public outrage that finally brought the government into the picture?
Public pressure was definitely a factor, but there was also this growing recognition among lawmakers that monopolies, they posed this fundamental threat to the principles of a free market. They stifled innovation, they limited consumer choice, and they concentrated wealth in the hands of a select few.
So it was a combination of economic and political concerns that finally led to action.
Precisely. And the culmination of these concerns was the passage of the Sherman Antitrust Act of 1890. This landmark piece of legislation designed to curb the power of monopolies and promote competition in the marketplace. It outlawed any contract, combination, or conspiracy in restraint of trade.
This must have been a major blow to Rockefeller. Did he simply accept defeat and dismantle Standard Oil?
Not without a fight. Rockefeller was a brilliant legal strategist as well. He used every loophole and legal maneuver at his disposal to challenge the Sherman Act and delay its enforcement. Remember the Standard Oil Trust, that ingenious legal structure he created. It was specifically designed to circumvent, antitrust regulations.
So it became a battle of wits between Rockefeller and the U.S. government.
It was a long and complex legal battle. It dragged on for over 2 decades. But the government's resolve to break up Standard Oil, it grew stronger, especially under President Theodore Roosevelt, who made trust busting a central part of his agenda. Roosevelt, he believed that the concentration of economic power in the hands of a few, well, it threatened American democracy itself.
Okay, so after all this legal wrangling, what was the final outcome? Was the government successful in breaking up Standard Oil?
Yes. In 1911, the Supreme Court ruled that Standard Oil was, in fact, an illegal monopoly and ordered it to be broken up into 34 separate companies.
Wow, so the giant was finally brought down. What happened to Rockefeller after the breakup of his empire? Did he just fade into obscurity?
That's where things get a bit, ironic. While the breakup of Standard Oil was hailed as a victory for fair competition, it actually made Rockefeller even wealthier.
Wait, how is that even possible? How can someone get richer from losing their company?
Well, the individual companies created from the breakup, companies like ExxonMobil, Chevron, and others, they went on to become incredibly successful in their own right. And as a major shareholder in all of them, Rockefeller's personal wealth, it continued to grow exponentially.
So in a way, he won even in defeat. That's a pretty surprising twist.
It is. Yeah, John D. Rockefeller's story, it's full of these contradictions and unexpected outcomes. He was a man of, great ambition. He revolutionized the oil industry and amassed unimaginable wealth. But his methods, they were often ruthless, and they raised serious questions about the ethics of unfettered capitalism. His legacy continues to be debated today as we grapple with the challenges of corporate power and its impact on society.
It's a reminder that history is rarely black and white, isn't it? Rockefeller's story is complex. It's nuanced, full of lessons about ambition, innovation, and the karma, the often unforeseen consequences of our actions. What do you think? Was he a visionary entrepreneur or a ruthless robber baron? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive, be sure to check out our other videos.
Subscribe and give me a like. Subscribe.